smear and the defamation coming from these people, it is relentless. And I might not even be alive to talk to you today if it weren't for Leigh Pacey and the Government Accountability Project. So I'm going to, your platform here, if you're a whistleblower, and I believe, and I hear from people in the EPA, 95, 97% good human beings, please come forward.
Now I'm on the right side.
Now, while most of the regime media has forgotten about East Palestine, Ohio, we continue to follow up. But our next guest, Scott Smith, he has followed up more than anyone. He's a testing expert and a CEO of US Biosolutions. His life was turned upside down when his small business was wiped out in oil-contaminated floodwaters in New York, making it his mission to focus on solving water and other contamination problems. Smith has been to more than 60 different oil and chemical disasters in the US and abroad, but lately, again, his focus has been on testing in East Palestine after the train derailment, and it doesn't seem the EPA is appreciating his efforts, and certainly not Norfolk Southern. So welcome back, Scott Smith. Thank you so much for coming back on. We want to continue to update your efforts there.
Kristi, see you again, and thanks so much for having me back on behalf of the community of East Palestine that deserves truth and justice. And independent journalism
Absolutely.
like you is the reason they're going to get it. No other reason.
Well, I appreciate that, Scott. And we are going to have to fly through all of these updates because there's just so much to update. First of all, we were being gaslit by the media, which I would know how that works. That this was safe and people could just go about their business like very soon after this train derailment happened. But you have continued the testing and come up with finding dioxins and you felt like that there's been a cover up at play. Did you want to kind of update me?
Yeah, I want to update you at a high level. I've been saying, back in April, and I believe, be proven correct that East Palestine 5, 10 years from now is gonna be a turning point for the country, because no matter where you live, this could be you next. And East Palestine represents everything that's great about this country, and every represents what's wrong. And everything that's great is people coming together from all over the country for truth. And everything that's wrong is a multi-billion-dollar corporation effectively using the federal government, the EPA, as their public relations arm. And what we have continued to find is, dioxins and other contaminants. And since the last time we spoke, the railroad has served me in my driveway with a subpoena, Norfolk Southern. They want all my communications with the media, all my communications with residents of East Palestine, and testing overly broad, overreaching, completely violates my constitutional rights. And what happened in September, the Government Accountability Project, protecting whistleblowers with the likes of Edward Snowden, reached out to me because of media coverage like yourself. And I may not even be alive right now. I surely wouldn't have been able to continue my work in East Palestine if it weren't for Leigh Pacey and the Government Accountability Project. And they've done a FOIA. I now know that there's 120 people at the EPA, what has come out, that watch every move I make and report on me. And I'm using these platforms to say, I have had some other potential whistleblowers. Please come forward. You don't have to go public like I did. You can stay in the background. But there are contractors. I'm aware of a whole host of other things that have gone on the gaming of results, in the lies and the deception. What's unprecedented in this situation is what is now being exposed about how it all works. Specifically, ex-government employees that have sold out to become lobbyists and work in the background for the railroad. Now, Kristi, in my mind, ex-government employees that sell out to multi-billion-dollar corporate America, they might be worse than the multi-billion-dollar company that's responsible for the pollution and not making it right.
Well, Scott, this is just so alarming because it's been a theme in a lot of my reporting as of late. And something that we've been seeing is government people, the collusion, basically, since they go from government to working at a corporate level or corporate to government. And we've seen it in the case of a woman that was uh, basically persecuted with Amazon and government working together because there was former employees, and then we've seen it with the Twitter and social media, FBI people coming and working at the social media companies. And speaking of that, this has also had some strange parallels with the cover-ups that went on with the COVID jab, because we're just now finding out that when they were saying safe and effective, there was multiple efforts to cover up potential harms. And we're seeing that with your case, is they were saying safe and you challenged them on that, but it's like they knew that things weren't completely safe. As far as the social media aspect, let's hit that real quick. You tried to alert people through social media to the news of the dioxins and the toxins you were continuing to pick up, and even Facebook and other social media
Yeah.
companies were trying to shut you down. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that is a key point. So the Government Accountability Project, which I have whistleblower protection, and their team of lawyers, so far Norfolk Southern hasn't come back for a motion to compel. And I sent you my detailed response to the Norfolk Southern unconstitutional subpoena, what I believe. But what was recently filed, and there's a press release. I've been a confirmed blue check mark on Facebook for quite some time. Never ever
Mhm.
have I been flagged or warned that my status, I'm going to lose status because of a post. Well, a community resident, Jamie Wallace, that was getting direct text messages from the EPA to take down Facebook posts, posted on my
Wow.
timeline, and an article came out from Kristi Angeles. And for you and your viewers, Kristi Angeles in the Huffington Post is one of the best long form investigative journalist pieces about mixtures of chemicals. What you have here is you have the EPA is the public relations arm for Norfolk Southern saying a singular exposure to a singular chemical. Well, what's unprecedented with East Palestine and all the disasters I've been involved in 17 years, it's the mixtures of chemicals. It's the oil. It's the dioxins that related from the burn, the vinyl chloride, and the way things were set on fire, and a whole host of chemicals. So there are no standards fact about mixtures of chemicals. So in trying to get this cited all the science, there was nothing controversial about this article. It was science that did not fit the nothing to see here false narrative from Norfolk Southern and the EPA. So Government Accountability Project has now FOIA'd the EPA for all their Facebook communications. And it is unbelievable that the condescending arrogance from from Mark Durno at the EPA, that he would demand and monitor that a private citizen take down a Facebook post. And then and I even had a long talk with Facebook, and they have a separate wall that does this with the government. We're hoping to uncover here exactly what's going on. And with the theory is Facebook has an entirely separate department, then they get paid hundreds of millions of dollars for the federal government, and they literally have a hotline in the middle of one of these things. But that's the theory. We're going to find out. But you have government here. If you step back and think about this, the federal government trying to step in and censor people from actually posting about irrefutable scientific fact. That is scary. I mean, this must be what it was like back in the 1980s, 70s, or in Russia. I mean, we're to the point where, I don't know, people might have more free speech in China on one of these things. I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, people need to realize they want to talk about democracy, democracy, democracy. If you don't have freedom of speech or your constitutional rights, you don't have a democracy. And I think it's time to talk about freedom of speech. And an event like this in East Palestine, why it's so important and way beyond what East Palestine is, this could be your community next. You could be silenced next. You could be on the receiving end of your family getting sick, having strokes, having, bleeding. I even had to have my nose cauterized. I've never had bloody noses, and I'm not complaining because I did this to support the community. But after all the soil testing, and you have the media that's on the ground, they're all getting sick, and they're saying nothing to see here and blaming the victims. But back to the point, is no matter where you live, if you live 1,000, 2,000 miles away from East Palestine, you need to pay attention to this, because this could be you and your family next, sick from some kind of contamination, with the federal government blaming you as the victim, that nothing to see here, it's the chemicals in your home. And the simple way to defeat this false narrative from the EPA is none of these health symptoms were ubiquitous in the community prior to the derailment. You don't even need my 22 trips and 26 rounds of testing. And the scary thing is, Kristi, or the sad thing is, I'm not necessarily the enemy of the railroad in Norfolk, of Norfolk Southern and the EPA, because 60% of my test results in soil are good news and do say nothing to see here in background. 40% have identified what is potentially hot zones where people are getting sick. So the ironic thing right here is, because I'm not controlled by the government or the public relations firm, they don't know what I'm going to say, but I could help bring everybody together and potentially limit the railroad's liability in this whole thing. And all the false accusations against me, dirty shovels, testing to get bad results. Well, 60% of my results are good news for the community. 40% are identified where people are sick. So that is where we are. And the smear and the defamation coming from these people, it is relentless. And I might not even be alive to talk to you today if it weren't for Leigh Pacey and the Government Accountability Project. So your platform here, if you're a whistleblower, and I believe, and I hear from people in the EPA, 95, 97% good human beings, please come forward. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to Leigh Pacey. You can be totally anonymous if you choose. You don't have to go public like I did.
Yeah, I mean, but anymore, like you said, because of the censorship efforts that you've been able to uncover, even when it's like, this is what they want to prevent against. They want to prevent you calling on other whistleblowers to come forward, because if you can't share it and people can't see it, then maybe they can't have that conviction to come and be a whistleblower. But keep on doing what you're doing, because you are making a difference, and we're going to keep on trying to elevate it as much as possible. What do you think that this Norfolk Southern subpoena is all about? I mean, you said you feel like it was a scare tactic, but do you think that they're going to try and come at you for defamation or something because it's making their company look bad? Or what's the MO here?
I would welcome for them to come at me for defamation, because you know how you clear that? Because I would be able to open discovery, and I would be able to find out everyone they're talking to. I go on record, even today, I would test side by side with Norfolk and the EPA. I have gone on, and there's a July 27th email where I send to Norfolk Southern and the EPA saying, I will meet with you. They canceled the meeting on me because they wouldn't share their data and detailed reports. I said, I will meet with you anytime on behalf of the community, as long as it's reciprocal. And they only wanted a one-way street. And the messed up thing here is, the EPA reports to me and you and all the other taxpayers. I don't report to them. And their arrogance and condescension is out of control, and they should not be serving as a public relations arm of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And the other thing is, just yesterday, the Government Accountability Project on the FOIA, there's up to 2,000 documents being withheld with my name. Think about that. I'm one person, and they're saying now they're not going to be able to produce those documents to the Government Accountability Project until March 15th. And I have repeatedly said, I will test side by side with the EPA, Norfolk Southern. I will meet with you. We'll test side by side and transparently. And I would say, if they sit down with me and if I've gotten anything wrong, I'll be the first one to come forward and issue a correction and an apology. If they, and they're not willing to sit down and talk to me. And they're, what are they hiding? The appearance is they have a lot to hide here.
Yeah, I mean, and to have the cliche saying, but it's so true. Those who have nothing to hide, hide nothing. And the very virtue of the fact that they are so concerned about you to the point that you feel like they're tracing and tracking where you are and when you're going to be there and all of that. I mean, if it was just foolish what you were doing, if there was not an importance, if there was not a fear that you would uncover something that they're hiding, why are they so heck bent on
Yeah.
wondering what you're doing?
There is an email, and I believe I sent it to you and your producer. I'll double check.
Mhm.
I've got confirmation from the limited FOIA from the Government Accountability Project. The EPA has 120 people. I've tracking. They're reporting every movement I make. And we saw him here. We talked here. He talked to this one. It's in writing. This stuff is really happening.
Yeah, I remember seeing that email and just saw the basically the thread of how many people it went out to and basically tracking you. So, it might seem sensational to say something like I would be dead if it weren't for whistleblower protection, but that's the thing, like when and you've been made aware that people are tracking you and following up on who you're talking to. I mean, I can see why you'd be concerned at this
But
point, right?
here's one other important thing, in that Barbara McCree, a multimedia communications person, she, right after I was interviewed on Fox News by Will Kane, March 17th, I go public, start talking about dioxins. On Monday, March 20th, Barbara McCree from the EPA, a multimedia communications person, sends an email out looking for my personal information, address, among other things. This is the federal government. And you know what? This is not me making it up. It's in black and white writing and was received by the Government Accountability Project. And I believe this was a blessing from God. I didn't know much about the Government Accountability Project, and I think the EPA Norfolk Southern thought they would finish me off. I'm not alleging that they were going to try to murder me at all, but I think they would finish me and try to destroy my businesses and my life. And then came along the Government Accountability Project. And the point is, the takeaway here is, other whistleblowers out here, I still believe we have far more great people in this country than bad people. Unfortunately, the bad people are in very high places. But if the great people come together and they blow the whistle and expose this, we can clean up all this corruption and this undue influence in government.
What is the main thing that you want exposed? Because you've been uncovering toxins, but I mean, is that the main point, or just is the main point that you want exposed is just the collusion and the buddy buddiness of basically, like you said, the EPA being a
Well,
PR machine for a company rather than caring about environmental protection, which is what they're
yeah,
supposed to do.
that's a great question. Well, first and foremost, I want to see the truth. How do you expose the truth, come out so these people in East Palestine can get help? Especially the ones with the health conditions. But above and beyond anything is the ex high level government employees and maybe elected officials that sell out all of us, all American citizens, that sell us out for their own financial gain to facilitate the undue influence of multi-billion-dollar corporations over government agencies. And you can talk about the big banks and all this too. You can get into all the mortgage crises and all. This applies broadly across the whole spectrum about this undue influence. That is the biggest thing that can happen, because when people's eyes get open, the good news is the majority of this country, once they open their eyes, can take action and come together. And that's exactly why we all get censored, because the government knows that. They fear millions of people getting a message that I'm putting out, you're putting out, or any other whistleblower. But I am optimistic that we're all going to come together and we're going to clean up this corruption. And it, like I said, I'll end with this. These ex high level government employees from agencies and elected officials selling out the rest of us, I think that's despicable evil. And I think it's probably worse than these polluters that try to cover things up. Those are the people that I'm on a mission to expose. And I will not stop until I expose these ex-government employees and elected officials that are selling us all out.
That is a great way to end it, Scott. I mean, we are so inspired by your passion to continue, and you have not forgotten about the community residents there. And I got to imagine that they're so thankful for you continuing to fight on the ground and make sure that if there is something that happened, that they're taken care of, because this is not their fault, and that we may not even know the full range of the problem until years later. So thank you for continuing to fight for them, Scott. We really appreciate it, and we're happy to take your updates whenever you have them.
Thank you very much, Kristi. Really, really appreciate having me back again and telling this story. Thank you so much.